Hi everyone, this is Mindy and welcome to my channel. In today's video, we are going to step up our die cut by doing some ombre ink blending. The first thing that I'm going to do is work on my background. And so for this, I am using the Star to Star Cling background stamp from Simon Says Stamp. It is a red rubber stamp, so I can remove the foam insert of my Misti. I'm placing that face down and picking that up with the door of the Misti. Then I'm bringing in some Hammermill cardstock that is cut to 6 by 6, and I'm going to prep this with my anti-static powder tool because I do want to do some heat embossing. I'm going to ink this up with my Versamark ink pad, stamp that down really well, and I'm actually going to stamp this about 2 to 3 times just to make sure all of those fine lines of the stamp transfer onto my cardstock really well. No matter how juicy my ink pad seems to be, I just seem to get better results by stamping it 2 or 3 times. Next, I'm going to sprinkle on some gold embossing powder. I'm going to kind of shake my card a little bit there to make sure that that embossing powder really settles into the ink, and then tap off the excess. And once my heat tool is nice and warmed up, I can bring it in and melt all of that embossing powder. So I'm going to set that off on the side and work on my sentiment, which is the star of the show. And this is the Hey Girl from Simon Says Stamp. I want to do some ink blending where I have an ombre effect where it's just kind of shifting colors from top to bottom. So I took a piece of Hammermill cardstock cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I just marked off with my pencils about how big or how much area that was going to cover. I'm starting at one end using Sunbeam ink, and I'm going to blend that on with my blending brush. Then I'm coming in with Cantaloupe. I kind of start in the center part there, and I'll blend down into that yellow. And then I'll come in with some Peony ink. Now each time I kind of have a separate section for each of those colors. And then what I do is I like to blend into the other color. I seem to get a better transition of colors when I do this, especially with that Peony because it can get pretty intense. So I went up to about that pencil line that I had drawn on there previously. I'm going to bring the die back in and yep, I lined it up pretty good. So once I have that on there and I get the colors in place the way I want them, I'm going to hold the die down with some low tack tape and run that through my die cut machine. This die cuts out very uniquely. So what I want to do is keep all of these pieces in place. And to do that, I'm using a piece of press and seal. So what I do is I'm using my Empress and I have it so mine is die cutting up. And I could place that press and seal over the entire back of my card front. And then I flip my magnet over and just carefully peel that up. And I'm going to carefully take that tape away and lift up my die cut piece. So almost all of the pieces stayed in place. There's one piece that kind of snuck behind. I'll get that one later. There are a couple pieces that were still stuck in the die. So I'm going to pop those out with my craft pick and then pick those up with my place and pierce tool and pop those back in. So that press and seal is holding everything together. I'm also die cutting it out of white cardstock, and I found this trick where if I just carefully slide my top plate away, most of my pieces will stay in place, and then I can use the press and seal again on the back of this. Sometimes if I just lift my plate up right away, a lot of it pops out, or static in my house is really bad, so everything just kind of goes flying. But by sliding my plate like that, I found I got it to, for the most part, stick down. The white layer is going to pretty much be my base, but I do want to have the word girl die cut out from some matte gold cardstock. So I want to make sure I kind of place that off on the side, and then I'm going to take this base piece and die cut it from white as well. Now I can start kind of placing this together. So I started with the word girl because everything pretty much builds up around this word. So I'm going to line that up on that white cardstock panel. And like I said, this is not only my base, but it's also going to give my die cut letters a little bit of lift. And then I can just carefully pick up each of those letters with my tweezers. I'm adding a little bit of liquid glue behind each of the letters and just kind of fitting them in really like a puzzle. And it's you can tell where everything is going to go because it fits in there. This is where that press and seal really came in handy because I don't have to hunt around for all of those pieces. Everything is exactly where it needs to be as long as I just transfer it over. So as I added the white pieces, I went up and grabbed my ink blended piece as well. So I got all the way through the front of this, and then I'm left with the word girl, which I die cut out of that matte gold cardstock, which looks really great with these ink blended letters. So you can see the transition of where it goes from that really bright pink down to into an orange and then a yellow. And I also have these other panels that I could still use for another card project, so I will just set those off on the side. Now for my background, I started out by going around the very edges and just trimming those off, and then my final size is going to be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm going to prep my card base, so I'm going to score it at 4 1/4 using my bone folder and my scoring board. Reinforce that fold with my bone folder, and then I can add my panel to the front of this. So this is a heavyweight cardstock, and I'm taking that star background and just adding that on top. And I was off just a little bit at the very bottom, and I'm using this rotary trimmer from Tim Holtz to trim off a little slice of that so that it is nice and flush. I added some thin foam tape behind my die cut panel, and then I can place that on the front of the card. And I'm going to call this card good at this point. I'm not going to add any embellishments or anything to it. I'm going to let the stars be that subtle background and then the sentiment be a front and center, and I can write a personal sentiment in the inside of the card. I hope you enjoyed today's card project and all the tips that I shared. I will have all of the supplies listed down below in the video description and over on my blog as well. Thanks for joining, and see you real soon.